The night shift at St. Mary's was chaos as usual. Stretchers rolling in, machines beeping, tired voices echoing through sterile halls. For Emily Carter, it was just another 12-hour storm she'd have to survive before sunrise. She'd been an ER nurse for nearly 9 years, long enough to know that coffee and adrenaline were poor substitutes for sleep. By 2 a.m., the smell of antiseptic mixed with burnt caffeine had become her perfume. She pushed a medication cart past curtained bays, humming softly to stay awake, when something small and colorful caught her eye on the linoleum floor. Piece of paper, crumpled, streaked with dirt and a faint smudge of blood. At first she almost kicked it aside. Our floors were full of forgotten things, but the flash of a bright blue crayon stopped her. Emily bent down, smoothing it open. It was a child's drawing, simple but heartbreakingly careful. A stick-figure woman with long brown hair stood beside a smaller figure holding a teddy bear. Above them, in crooked letters, someone had written "Mom plus me equals home." The sky was filled with uneven yellow stars. But what made Emily freeze wasn't the picture itself. It was the name written in red crayon at the bottom. For Emily. Her pulse skipped. She looked around the hallway, suddenly aware of every sound. The rhythmic hiss of oxygen, a distant cry from pediatrics, the low murmur of doctors at triage. She turned the paper over, but there was nothing else. No last name, no room number. Just for Emily. Her first thought was that one of the pediatric patients had drawn it for another nurse, maybe a coincidence. But something about the handwriting felt disturbingly familiar, like the loops of the E and the uneven tail on the Y. It looked exactly like the handwriting she used to see on birthday cards. From her daughter, Lily, who had disappeared 4 years ago. Her breath caught. She pressed a hand against her chest, willing her heartbeat to slow. "It can't be," she whispered to herself. She folded the drawing carefully and slipped it into her pocket before anyone noticed. A trauma call came through the intercom. Incoming female child. Approximate 7 years old. Hit and run. 5 minutes out. The hallway erupted in motion. Emily's training kicked in, overriding the tremor in her hands. She moved to Trauma Bay 3, prepping oxygen lines and checking monitors, her mind spinning even as her body worked automatically. When the paramedics burst through the doors, Emily's world narrowed to a single sound, the faint whimper of a child being lifted onto the gurney. The little girl was pale, her hair tangled, her face streaked with rain and grime. She clutched something in her hand, a stuffed bear with one missing button eye. "Found her under the overpass," one of the EMTs reported. No ID, no parent on scene. Emily leaned in to check vitals and froze again. Around the child's wrist was a hospital bracelet, old and faded, letters nearly rubbed off. But she could still read the name printed in faint gray ink. Lily Carter. Her breath left her body. For a second, the world tilted, the machines, the lights, the shouting, everything blurred. She grabbed the rail of the bed to steady herself. Where did you find her?" she managed. "Under Route 19, the medic said, adjusting the oxygen mask. Looked like she'd been hiding there a while. Emily's voice broke. "That's my daughter." The room went silent except for the steady beep of the heart monitor. No one spoke as Emily stood there, tears mixing with the sweat on her cheeks, staring at the little girl she had mourned for 4 endless years. And in that single, impossible moment, the drawing in her pocket made sense. Emily's world spun between disbelief and duty. Her hands trembled, but training took over because in the ER, emotion was a luxury you couldn't afford. She snapped into action, clipping monitors, checking pulse, calling for vitals. The other nurses exchanged glances, sensing something was wrong, but none dared to interrupt. The little girl on the table, her skin pale under the harsh fluorescent light, looked fragile, almost ghost-like. The bruise along her temple told a story of impact. The dirt beneath her nails whispered of nights spent outside. And still, Somehow, her fingers wouldn't let go of that ragged stuffed bear. BP 90 over 60. She's dehydrated. Mild hypothermia, Dr. Larson said, his tone brisk. We'll need fluids, warm saline, glucose drip. Emily's voice broke through before she could stop it. Her name's Lily. The doctor glanced up, eyebrows raised. You know her. Emily swallowed hard. She's my daughter. Silence hung heavy in the room. One of the nurses froze mid-motion. Even the rhythmic beeping of the monitor felt louder. Larson's eyes softened for the briefest moment before professionalism returned. Then you know she needs you focused, Emily. That single sentence snapped her back. She nodded once, forcing composure as she adjusted the four-line. She could fall apart later if later ever came. Minutes bled into hours as they worked. Oxygen, fluids, warming blankets. Emily kept her eyes on the numbers climbing slowly on the monitor, like watching life crawl back into a body that had already been lost once. Every small improvement felt like defying fate itself. By sunrise, the ER had quieted. The chaos had thinned into the familiar hum of machines and distant footsteps. Emily sat beside the bed, the adrenaline finally draining from her body. Lily's breathing had steadied. Color was returning to her cheeks. The morning light coming through the blinds turned her hair golden, the same shade Emily used to braid before school. The bear lay between them, worn thin, its fur matted from years of clinging. Emily reached out and brushed a curl from her daughter's forehead. I looked for you every day, she whispered, her voice shaking. Every single day. Lily stirred slightly, her eyelids fluttering. Then her small voice, rough and dry, slipped through the air. Mommy! It hit Emily like lightning. The sound of that word, the one she'd stopped believing she'd ever hear again. Tears blurred her vision as she leaned forward, gripping Lily's hand. I'm here, baby. I'm right here. Lily blinked up at her, confusion in her gaze. I drew you, she said faintly, so you'd find me. Emily froze, remembering the crumpled paper in her pocket. She pulled it out and unfolded it with trembling fingers. You mean this? The little girl smiled weakly. Yeah, I left it for you, at the hospital before I ran away. Emily's heart nearly stopped. Before you ran away? But how? Where did you go? Lily's voice cracked as she whispered. He said he'd take care of me, but he lied. Emily's stomach turned cold. Who? Sweetheart. The child's lip trembled. Mom's friend. Emily went still. The words dropped like stones into the air. After her husband's death, she'd been a wreck, working double shifts, trusting people she barely knew to watch Lily when she couldn't. One of them had taken her. The weight of guilt pressed down so hard she could barely breathe. Lily's eyes started to close again, exhaustion pulling her under. Don't go, Emily whispered, holding her tighter. You're safe now, I promise. When the doctor returned an hour later, Emily was still there, silent, steady, hand locked around her daughter's. The nurse everyone knew as composed and unshakable had tears on her face. But for once, she didn't wipe them away. Because in that ER, where she'd seen countless people die, something miraculous had lived. But miracles, Emily knew, always came with questions. And as dawn broke over the city, she realized hers had only just begun. By late afternoon, the storm outside had eased, but the one inside Emily hadn't. The hospital buzzed with its usual rhythm. Pages over the intercom, stretchers wheeling by, nurses moving with quiet efficiency. But for Emily, every sound felt distant. She sat beside Lily's bed, her daughter sleeping peacefully now, her line gently pulsing. It should have felt like relief. Instead, she felt something else, dread. Dr. Larson had insisted Lily stay overnight for observation. She's stable, he'd said, but she's been malnourished, exposed, and traumatized. The mind takes longer to heal than the body. Emily had nodded, but her focus never left her daughter. Every time Lily's chest rose, she felt like she could breathe again. Every time it fell, she feared it might not rise again. She brushed her thumb across Lily's knuckles, remembering the nights she'd stayed awake staring at an empty bed, the police reports, the missing flyers that faded on street poles until rain washed them away. She had stopped hoping for closure. She had learned to survive by pretending she had. Now, with her daughter finally here, she couldn't escape one question. Who had taken her, and why? At around 6 p.m., the automatic doors hissed open, and a man stepped into the ER lobby. Tall, early 40s, neatly dressed in a gray coat, a small bouquet of white flowers in one hand. To anyone else, he looked like another visitor. To Emily, when she caught sight of him through the glass, it felt like the ground fell away beneath her. Ethan Moore. The name tasted like iron. He had been her husband's friend. Charming, dependable, always helping. When her husband's illness kept her at work too long. After her husband died, Ethan had checked in constantly, helped around the house, picked up Lily from daycare when Emily was stuck on shift. He'd seemed safe, trustworthy, until the night Lily disappeared. The police had questioned him briefly, but there was no evidence, no reason to hold him. Then he moved away, and Emily had spent 4 years haunted by the unspoken suspicion that maybe, somehow, he'd had something to do with it. Now here he was, walking calmly toward pediatrics, holding flowers. Her pulse thundered. She stood abruptly, knocking her chair over. One of the nurses startled. "Emily, are you okay?" "I'll be back," she muttered, already halfway down the hall. Ethan was at the nurse's station when she reached him. He turned at the sound of her voice. "Ethan." For a moment he froze, just long enough for her to see the flicker of surprise in his eyes before he smiled. "Emily. Wow, it's been years." Her throat tightened. "What are you doing here?" He gestured toward the flowers, his tone too casual. "Visiting a friend's kid. I didn't even know you worked here." Her eyes narrowed. "A friend's kid in this ward?" "Yeah, why?" He tilted his head slightly, studying her the way someone studies a room before lying in it. "You look pale. Everything okay?" She wanted to scream, to grab his collar and demand the truth, but her voice came out steady. "You should leave." He blinked. "Excuse me?" "Leave. Now." The warmth dropped from his expression. "Emily, what's going on?" She stepped closer, her voice low. "My daughter's here." He went very still. For a heartbeat, something flashed behind his eyes. A flicker of calculation, maybe fear. Then it was gone, replaced by that calm, polite mask. That's wonderful," he said softly. "You found her." Her hands curled into fists. "Don't pretend you didn't know she was missing." He sighed, lowering his voice. "Emily, you've been through a lot. I don't know what you're implying, but I think it's better if—" "Don't." The single word cut like a blade. "If I find out you had anything to do with what happened to her, I swear." Before she could finish, Dr. Larson appeared behind her. "Emily? Everything all right here?" She turned slightly, struggling to compose herself. "Yes, I was just leaving." But Ethan's smile returned, easy and deliberate. "Actually, doctor, I was just congratulating her. It's good news, isn't it? A lost child coming home." Emily's stomach twisted. She didn't answer. Instead, she turned and walked back toward the room, her body trembling. She could feel his gaze on her the whole way down the corridor. When she stepped back into Lily's room, her daughter was still asleep, peaceful and unaware. Emily closed the door, locking it quietly. She sank into the chair and stared at the drawing on the bedside table, the same one she'd found that night. Her name in red crayon, her daughter's message across time. And suddenly, she understood. The drawing wasn't a coincidence. It was a trail. Someone, maybe Ethan, had made sure it ended up here. And Emily knew one thing now with perfect certainty. This wasn't over. That night, the hospital seemed quieter than usual, but inside Emily's chest, everything screamed. She couldn't stop replaying Ethan's face in her head, that calm, controlled expression masking something darker. It was the same look he'd worn years ago at her husband's funeral, offering condolences with one hand while his other hand lingered too long on her shoulder. She'd been too numb to notice then, too exhausted to question. Now she knew better. Emily sat by Lily's bed again, watching her daughter breathe. The monitors hummed a soft rhythm, a mechanical heartbeat that grounded her in the moment. The small stuffed bear lay between them, its one eye catching the dim light. Lily stirred, whispering in her sleep, "Don't tell him, Mommy, please." Emily leaned forward instantly. "Hey, shoo. It's okay, baby. You're safe." But Lily's hand gripped the blanket tighter. "He said he'd take me home. He said you didn't want me." The words hit like a knife. Emily froze, her lungs refusing to move. "Who said that, sweetheart?" she whispered, her voice trembling. Lily's eyes blinked open, glassy with confusion and fear. "The man. The one from before. He had your picture. He said you forgot." Emily's stomach twisted violently. She forced herself to breathe. "Where did you see him, Lily?" The girl frowned, trying to remember. "He found me after school. I wanted to wait for you, but he said you were busy helping sick people. He said I should come with him until you were ready." Emily pressed her fist against her mouth, holding in a sob. Guilt spread like poison. She had been working late that week. Double shifts, emergencies, her pager never silent. It would have been easy for someone to watch, to plan. "Did he ever hurt you?" Emily asked softly. Lily shook her head, staring at her hands. "He got angry sometimes. Said I didn't listen. I ran away one night. He said he'd find me." Emily's vision blurred. She wanted to pull her daughter into her arms and never let go, but she forced herself to stay calm. "You did the right thing by running, baby. You're safe now. I promise." Lily hesitated, then reached under the blanket and pulled out a folded piece of paper. "I drew this when I hid under the bridge. I thought if someone found it, they'd know who I was." Emily unfolded it carefully. Another drawing, this time of a woman and a child standing under a big blue sky. But behind them, in the corner, was a small dark shape drawn in gray crayon. A man with no face. Emily's throat closed. "Did you draw him?" Lily nodded. He was watching. For a moment, Emily couldn't move. Every instinct inside her screamed to get her daughter out of there. Out of the hospital, out of the city. If Ethan had been bold enough to walk into St. Mary's, he wasn't afraid of being seen. That meant one thing. He thought she had no proof. But he was wrong. Emily stood, tucking the drawing carefully into her pocket. Then she leaned down and kissed Lily's forehead. "Sleep, baby. Mommy has to make a call." She stepped into the hallway, her heartbeat sharp and fast. The phone on the wall felt cold in her hand as she dialed the number she hadn't used in years. Detective Alan Pierce. He'd handled Lily's missing person case. He'd been the only one who believed her when everyone else said it was hopeless. The line clicked. "Pierce. It's Emily Carter," she said quickly. "You need to get to St. Mary's Hospital right now. It's about my daughter." A long pause. "Your daughter?" His voice shifted instantly. "Emily, what?" "She's here," she interrupted. "Alive. But he's here too. Ethan Moore. He came to the hospital. She could hear the sound of movement on the other end, the clatter of keys. I'm on my way. Don't let her out of your sight. I won't, Emily said, glancing toward the room. But hurry, please. When she hung up, she caught her reflection in the glass of the nurse's station. Pale, sleepless, shaking. But beneath that, a fire burned. For the first time in years, she wasn't the grieving mother waiting for answers. She was the one who had them. As the night deepened, Emily stood guard by Lily's door, every shadow in the hallway feeling heavier than it should. The steady buzz of the fluorescent lights mixed with the thump of her heartbeat. Down the corridor, the elevator dinged softly. Someone stepped out. Emily turned and froze. It was Ethan. Again. This time he wasn't carrying flowers. He just smiled, hands in his pockets, and said quietly, "You shouldn't have called anyone." The hallway seemed to shrink around Emily. Every instinct screamed run, but her feet held firm. Ethan's footsteps echoed on the tile floor, steady, confident, predatory. He looked almost casual under the sterile hospital light, his gray coat neatly pressed, his smile calm, his eyes too sharp to belong to an innocent man. "What are you doing here?" Emily managed, her voice barely more than a whisper. Ethan tilted his head, as though the question amused him. "You called someone, didn't you? Pierce, maybe?" His tone was smooth, conversational, but his eyes gleamed with something cold. That was a mistake. She took a small step back toward Lily's door, her hand brushing the handle. "You stay away from her," she warned. "If you come any closer, I swear I'll—" He chuckled softly, cutting her off. "You'll what, Emily? Scream? Call security? You think anyone here will believe you? I'm the generous friend. Remember? The one who helped when your husband was dying, when you couldn't pay the mortgage." His smile darkened. "The one who loved your daughter like she was my own." Emily's stomach turned. "You took her," she said quietly. He didn't deny it. He simply looked down the hallway, his jaw tightening. "You weren't there. Every night she cried for you. Every day she waited. And you never came. I was the one who made her breakfast, who told her bedtime stories. I gave her what you couldn't, attention. You kidnapped her," Emily hissed. "You stole her life." His voice sharpened. "I saved her. You would have buried yourself in another double shift, forgotten her birthday again, come home smelling like bleach and coffee. You think that's love?" Emily's breath caught. He took a step closer. "She needed a father," Ethan said quietly, his tone chillingly calm. "I just stepped in." The lights above flickered, the air thick with tension. Emily's hand found the cold metal of a nearby crash cart. Her fingers closed around the emergency alarm switch, but before she could press it, Ethan's voice softened. "I didn't mean for it to go that far," he said. "She ran away that night. I was trying to keep her safe, but she panicked. She hit her head on the railing near the pier. He stopped. His voice cracked for the first time. "I couldn't find her. I thought she was dead." Emily stared at him, shock and fury colliding in her chest. "You left her there," she whispered. "You left a 7-year-old girl alone in the dark." Ethan's facade cracked completely. "I panicked," he said hoarsely. "You don't understand. I thought I'd ruined everything, so I disappeared. I told myself it was better for both of you if I stayed gone." Before Emily could respond, the distant sound of hurried footsteps echoed from the stairwell. Ethan turned toward the noise, realization dawning. "Pierce," he muttered under his breath. Emily didn't hesitate. She slammed her hand against the emergency alarm. The shrill sound tore through the corridor, lights flashing red. Ethan lunged forward, grabbing her wrist. "Stop it. You don't know what they'll do to me. Let me go," she cried, struggling, but his grip tightened. The doors at the end of the hallway burst open. Detective Pierce and 2 officers rushed in, weapons drawn. Hands where I can see them. Ethan froze. His gaze darted between Emily, the officers, and Lily's room behind her. His shoulders slumped as if the weight of his own sins finally crushed him. Slowly, he raised his hands. Pierce moved forward, cuffing him while reciting his rights. Ethan didn't resist. He just looked at Emily one last time, his voice barely a whisper. I didn't want to hurt her. I just wanted to be remembered. Emily said nothing. There were no words big enough for what he'd done. As the officers led him away, she felt her knees give out. Pierce caught her arm gently. You did the right thing, he said quietly. She nodded faintly, staring at the end of the hallway where Ethan disappeared. It doesn't feel like it. Pierce hesitated. Justice rarely does. When Emily returned to Lily's room, her daughter was awake, eyes wide with fear. Mommy? I heard shouting. What happened? Emily sat beside her, brushing her hair back. It's over, sweetheart. You're safe now. Lily's lip trembled. He's gone. Emily nodded. He's gone. The little girl's eyes filled with tears. I thought you didn't want me anymore. Emily felt her own tears spill freely then. I never stopped wanting you, she whispered. Not for 1 second. I looked for you every day, baby. Lily crawled into her arms, burying her face in Emily's shoulder. Can we go home now? Emily held her tight. Yes, she said softly. We can finally go home. Outside, the storm that had raged all night had broken into a soft drizzle. Morning light began to seep through the hospital windows, turning everything gold. For the first time in years, Emily felt the warmth of hope again. Fragile, real, and entirely hers. As they left the ER together, the same place where the nightmare had begun, Emily looked down at her daughter and whispered, No one will ever take you away from me again. Lily squeezed her hand. I know. And for the first time since the night she disappeared, Emily believed it.